King Von's own father says Lil Durk backdoored him, setting up his closest friend just to keep a case from ever reaching trial. The question is, did Durk sacrifice Von to save himself? The 2019 varsity case in Atlanta was thought to be closed, but new police records suggest a darker story. Was Lil Durk really the brother he claimed to be, or did he set King Von up? When prosecutors dropped the charges, everyone thought Lil Durk was in the clear. But according to King Von's father, the real story is only just beginning, with text messages, bank records, and security files pointing straight at Durk. A major case involving rapper Lil Durk and the late King Von is back in the headlines. Prosecutors in Atlanta have decided to move forward after new evidence surfaced about a 2019 incident outside the famous Varsity restaurant. Back then, around 5 a.m. on February 5th, Lil Durk, whose real name is Durk Derek Banks, and his associate Devontae Bennett, better known as King Von, were caught on camera during a confrontation with a man named Alexander Witherspoon. Police say both rappers knew Witherspoon personally. In February 2019, what was supposed to be another night out in Atlanta turned into one of the most infamous incidents in modern hip-hop history. According to investigators, rappers Lil Durk, born Durk Derek Banks, and King Von, Devontae Von Bennett, confronted a man named Alexander Witherspoon outside the iconic Varsity restaurant. The confrontation wasn't random. Police say Witherspoon was a known acquaintance, and the attack seemed targeted rather than spur of the moment. Authorities alleged that Durk and Von's intentions that night were clear. They wanted Witherspoon's cash, jewelry, and even his Jeep Cherokee. This wasn't hearsay. Surveillance cameras surrounding the busy drive-in captured much of the incident as it unfolded. The footage would later become the backbone of the case against the two Chicago rappers. By June of that year, the Atlanta courtroom was filled with tension as detectives took the stand during a lengthy probable cause hearing. They testified that the video appeared to show Lil Durk firing shots from a moving vehicle while King Von sat behind the wheel. The courtroom murmured as the details were revealed. If the footage was as damning as prosecutors suggested, both men could be facing serious consequences. After hearing the testimony, the judge ruled that there was enough evidence to move forward with the charges. Both rappers were arrested. For King Von, who was still emerging as a force in the drill rap scene, it was a devastating setback. For Lil Durk, who was already gaining national recognition, it threatened to derail everything he had worked for. The arrests and fallout. When police finally moved in, they arrested Von first. Not long after, Lil Durk also turned himself in. Around this time, Durk released his track, Turn Myself In, a song that gave fans a raw and emotional glimpse into his state of mind. He rapped about the fear of losing it all, the pain of facing prison time, and the loyalty he felt toward those closest to him. The timing of the release added another layer of drama to the already explosive case. Soon after, both men were granted bond, Von under his own conditions and Durk under a hefty $250,000 bond. However, the restrictions were strict. They were ordered to stay away from weapons, avoid certain people, and check in regularly. For a time, it seemed the case was moving toward a trial that could change the course of their lives. But then came an unexpected twist. Charges dropped against Lil Durk. In October 2022, Fulton County prosecutors stunned the public by announcing they were dropping all charges against Lil Durk. Their official statement read, "In the interest of justice and under prosecutorial discretion, the case is dismissed." For many, this decision raised more questions than answers. Why drop the charges after years of hearings, testimony, and evidence? Prosecutors hinted at the reason. King Von had been killed in 2020, meaning one of the primary defendants could no longer stand trial. Without him, the case looked far weaker. Prosecutors suggested that if Von had lived, the case would have likely gone before a jury in 2024. But with his passing, Durk was given a free pass. Von's father speaks out. That wasn't the end of the story. Not long after the charges were dropped, King Von's father made explosive claims. He alleged that Lil Durk may have backdoored his own friend, meaning he set Von up to ensure the Varsity case never made it to trial. According to Von's father, Durk had a clear motive: protecting his career and making sure he never faced prison time for the events of that February night. He went even further, saying he had text messages, bank records, and statements that pointed to money being exchanged and a possible plan to eliminate Von. While some dismissed the claims as speculation fueled by grief, others noted how his accusations lined up with odd details surrounding the case: motive, loyalty, and rivalry. One theory that has circulated is that Von's rising star might have threatened Durk. Vaughn wasn't officially signed under Durk's label in a binding way, and some close to the situation suggested that his rapid rise could have overshadowed Durk's own career. How can you bring someone into the business and then watch them surpass you? Vaughn's father asked in one interview. This idea, whether true or not, tapped into a larger conversation about loyalty and competition in hip-hop. Fans debated whether Durk truly saw Vaughn as a brother, or whether the business side of things created hidden tension between them. The court of public opinion. Meanwhile, online investigators dove into the Varsity case files and discovered something strange. Parts of the case appeared to have been closed privately, away from public view. This led to speculation that Durk's legal team may have struck a behind-the-scenes deal with the courts, further fueling suspicions of foul play. At the same time, questions were raised about Vaughn's security arrangements on the night he died in 2020. Newly released police files revealed that Vaughn's bodyguards had been paid through a label connected to Lil Durk. Yet, when the deadly altercation with Quando Rondo and Lil Tim erupted, those very guards reportedly ran instead of protecting him. For Vaughn's father, that was one more piece of the puzzle, one more sign that his son may have been betrayed. A legacy overshadowed. The Varsity case, though never fully resolved in court, remains a shadow hanging over both men's legacies. For Durk, the dropped charges allowed him to continue building his career, releasing albums, and touring worldwide. For Vaughn, the case became a tragic footnote to a life and career cut short at just 26 years old. And for fans, the questions remain, was this just another tragic story of street life colliding with fame? Or was there something deeper, a betrayal that ensured one man walked free while another never had the chance to clear his name? Either way, the Varsity incident will always be remembered as the moment that tied both Lil Durk and King Von to a chain of events that ended in loyalty, loss, and lingering suspicion. Durk was arrested soon after. Around this time, he released his well-known track, Turn Myself In, which he recorded just days before his arrest. Both men eventually posted bond, Durk for $250,000 and Vaughn under separate conditions. Then, in October 2022, Fulton County prosecutors quietly dropped all charges against Lil Durk in the interest of justice. Why? By that point, King Von had been killed in 2020. Without him alive to face trial, the case couldn't move forward as originally planned. Had Vaughn survived, the case was expected to go to trial in 2024. But new claims have added another layer of controversy. Vaughn's father now alleges that Lil Durk may have backdoored set up King Von to prevent the Varsity case from ever reaching a jury. He claims to have text messages, banking records, and statements that could show a financial motive, pointing to a contract and payments that allegedly linked Durk to Vaughn's death. When King Von's father spoke out about his son's tragic story, his words carried the weight of both grief and suspicion. He didn't just mourn Vaughn's death, he questioned the relationships and motives of those closest to him. At the center of his concerns was Lil Durk, a man who had once been seen as Vaughn's mentor and big brother figure in the music industry. According to Vaughn's father, jealousy and business rivalry may have played a bigger role in the background than most fans ever realized. He pointed out that King Von, despite being introduced to the spotlight through Durk, was never formally signed under Durk's label in a way that tied his future directly to him. This meant Vaughn had the freedom to grow his career independently, and he was growing fast. In the cutthroat world of hip-hop, where careers can skyrocket overnight, that freedom could be seen as both a blessing and a threat. Vaughn's rising popularity, his raw storytelling, and his authentic voice from the streets of Chicago quickly earned him a loyal following. Some in the industry began whispering that Vaughn's momentum might even surpass Durk's own. For a man already established, but still climbing, this could easily plant the seeds of envy. Vaughn's father recalled this possibility in painful terms. "How do you bring someone into the business only for them to surpass you?" he reportedly asked in an interview. The question wasn't just rhetorical, it revealed his belief that Durk may have seen Vaughn not only as a friend and collaborator, but also as a potential rival. The business side of brotherhood. The relationship between Lil Durk and King Von was often portrayed as one built on loyalty and family-like trust. Durk gave Vaughn visibility, featured him in songs, and opened doors that helped him reach a national audience. To fans, it looked like a brotherhood that went deeper than business. But Vaughn's father suggested that once money and fame entered the picture, things became more complicated. Without a binding contract under Durk's label, Vaughn could enjoy success without directly contributing to Durk's empire. Every stream, every show, and every album Vaughn sold was his own, not something Durk could fully claim credit or financial gain for. In a competitive industry, where controlling talent often means securing long-term wealth, this detail mattered. From Von's father's perspective, this dynamic may have fueled silent tension. He implied that what looked like brotherhood on the surface might have been clouded by an undercurrent of rivalry. A growing star. By late 2019 and into 2020, King Von's name was everywhere. His vivid storytelling and drill-inspired tracks painted raw pictures of street life, and fans connected to his authenticity. Songs like Crazy Story became anthems, and Von was increasingly seen as one of Chicago's brightest new voices. This rise wasn't just personal success, it shifted the balance within Durk's circle. Von wasn't just another artist on the come-up, he was becoming a headliner in his own right. For some, this meant Durk and Von were building an empire together. But to others, it raised the question, what happens when the student starts to outshine the teacher? The father's belief. Von's father has remained adamant in his view that this shifting dynamic between Durk and Von was not without consequences. To him, the lack of a formal contract combined with Von's rapid rise created a dangerous mixture of freedom, rivalry, and jealousy. In his eyes, it was entirely possible that this tension played a role in the events that followed, both in the fallout from the varsity case and in the circumstances leading up to Von's death in 2020. Whether or not his claims are true is still debated fiercely among fans, bloggers, and industry insiders. Some argue that the father's perspective is colored by grief, searching for explanations in a world that rarely offers simple answers. Others, however, believe his suspicions fit too neatly with the odd details surrounding both the legal cases and the final night of Von's life to ignore. An unanswered question. At the heart of it all lies a painful, unresolved question. Was Von's success a blessing, or did it turn into a silent threat within his own circle? His father's words highlight the darker side of the music industry, where loyalty and competition often blur into one another, and where friendships can be tested by fame. For fans, King Von will always be remembered for his music and the impact he made in such a short time. But for his father, the legacy is heavier, a mix of pride in his son's achievements and suspicion that envy and rivalry may have played a role in taking it all away. Online investigators have also dug deeper into the 2019 case. They claim it was closed behind the scenes, possibly through a private agreement between Durk's team and the courts. Meanwhile, speculation about Von's security that night has raised more questions. According to the newly released police files, Von had paid bodyguards through a label owned by Lil Durk. Yet, during the deadly altercation, those guards reportedly fled instead of protecting him. Even King Von's final hours are now under scrutiny. The files reveal that Von survived 2 major surgeries after being rushed to the hospital, only to reportedly become startled and get into an altercation with a nurse. This detail wasn't public until recently and raises questions about what really happened during his last moments. Von's father says he's sharing all of this because new police records released this week expose details the public had never seen. He believes these files show the full truth about what happened, not just at the varsity in 2019, but also on the night his son died. In the court of public opinion, the story has reignited debates about loyalty, fame, and power in the rap industry. If true, the allegations suggest a tragic betrayal. If not, they're a reminder of how rumors, lawsuits, and death can intertwine when money and music collide. Security guards exist to protect the person they're hired for. Yet on the night King Von was killed, many fans still ask, how did they let him walk straight into danger? To some, it feels like foul play. To really understand what happened, we have to look at the full police report. On November 5, 2020, King Von and his team headed to a club in Atlanta for his album release party. It was supposed to be a night of celebration, a milestone in his career. Von grew up in Chicago's O Block, a place where enemies were easy to find. He knew the risks of being out in public, which is why he rolled deep that night, about 20 to 25 people across 8 cars. His manager, 100K Track, later explained the level of security Von kept around him. He said Von usually had 1 main security guard, plus 2 more, along with a tight-knit crew who protected him as if he were family. They loved Von more than any hired guard could, the manager said. That night, the group was about 10 cars deep. The release party itself went smoothly. The mood was upbeat, the drinks flowing, the music loud. But at around 2:30 a.m., when the party wrapped up, Von suddenly changed plans. Originally, the team was headed back to an Airbnb. In fact, Von's SUV even began driving that way. Then, at the last minute, his car made a U-turn and drove toward another club, Monaco Lounge. Strangely, only the people in Von's vehicle knew the plans had changed. By the time the rest of the crew found out, they had to reroute to catch up. When Von's manager finally arrived at Monaco, he noticed something unusual. Von was quiet, almost withdrawn, not like the animated person he usually was. Instead of hopping out and rushing inside, Von sat in his truck for about 30 minutes, barely speaking. His manager even climbed in beside him to ask what was wrong. Eventually, Von agreed to go in. Because of Monaco's club rules, Von's team had to leave their guns outside. Security checked the venue first to make sure it was safe. What they didn't realize was that the danger wasn't inside the club, it was outside, waiting. Sitting in a nearby SUV was Quando Rondo and some of his associates. One of Von's security guards spotted them and ran back to alert him. The moment Von heard Quando was there, something in him snapped. He jumped out of the truck, determined to confront him. Von's friends tried to calm him down, but he ignored them. He walked straight around the front of a white vehicle, locked eyes with Quando, and without hesitation, began swinging. The fight lasted only seconds before it escalated. Lil Tim, Quando's close friend, jumped out of the SUV with a gun. He fired into the crowd, hitting Von multiple times. Von's manager was also struck in the leg. Von's crew returned fire instantly, hitting Lil Tim and knocking him to the ground. The chaos drew the attention of 2 off-duty officers nearby, plus 1 on-duty officer, who fired their own weapons to break up the scene. In the crossfire, another man from Von's group lost his life. Von lay in the street, gravely wounded. In the confusion, some witnesses thought Quando was trying to snatch Von's chain, while others believed Von was actually holding onto him, refusing to let go even as he collapsed. According to those who were closest, Von was so strong he literally held onto Quando until the very end. What was meant to be a night of celebration turned into one of the darkest tragedies in rap history, a moment where loyalty, pride, and split-second decisions sealed King Von's fate forever. As the gunfire faded and chaos settled, the desperate attempt to save King Von's life began. His close friend Mu ran straight into the middle of the street, shoving Quando Rondo away from Von's body. That split-second move forced Quando and his crew to retreat. They scrambled back into their white SUV and sped off toward the hospital. Von's team, meanwhile, lifted him off the pavement and rushed him into their own vehicle. Even though he had been struck 4 times, he was still conscious, still talking. Witnesses inside the car later recalled how Von, despite bleeding heavily, was the one trying to keep everyone calm. "Chill. Slow down. Just get me to the hospital. I'm going to be good," he told them. His composure made those around him believe he would survive. At the hospital, doctors immediately rushed Von into surgery. Against the odds, he pulled through 2 operations. But in a heartbreaking twist, he later died after becoming startled by a nurse while recovering. The official files reveal something strange as well. In his final moments, Von was searching for a gun that he never actually had. This detail only surfaced years later, raising new questions about what really unfolded. Looking back, some of Von's associates admitted the tragedy should never have happened. He had security, yet no one stepped in fast enough. If you had real security, one friend said in a past interview, they would have been more prepared, like they would in Chicago. The news of King Von's death quickly spread across national headlines. Authorities confirmed he was one of the victims of the Atlanta shooting that night, and the world now knew Quando Rondo and his friend Lil Tim were at the center of it all. When the dust settled, all eyes turned to their response. Quando Rondo spoke first, saying, "Everybody on my side got families, got kids, got mamas who love them. All this is stupid. It could have been handled in a whole different way. Could have been handled in music, could have been handled with money. Not like this." Even Lil Tim, the man who pulled the trigger, gave his side of the story. He insisted it was never about disrespect, only protection. "I was just looking out for my brother," he explained. "If Von didn't do that last night, he'd still be alive. I'm a humble person. I'm not here for clout, not trying to disrespect his mama or his people. But they popped it off, I just reacted." And just like that, a night that was meant to celebrate King Von's rise ended in the moment that would forever mark his fall.